They brought a moving truck to take me to a nursing home. They expected to walk away with $1 million commission. Instead, I handed them a receipt for a luxury cruise suite that cost their entire inheritance. Watch their faces when they realize the money is gone. There is a particular way the light hits the mahogany beams of a 1912 Craftsman home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It does not just illuminate the room, it sets the wood on fire. It turns the deep, rich grain into something that looks like molten amber. I have lived in this house in Pasadena for 45 years, and I still stop what I am doing every single day to watch that light. I was standing in the sunroom, holding my Japanese pruning shears. They are heavy, made of carbon steel, and sharp enough to cut through a finger if one is careless. I was not careless. I was pruning the bonsai ficus. I have been training since 1983. Snip, pause, assess, snip. My name is Martha Sterling. I am 74 years old. To the outside world, and specifically to my 2 children, I am a retired widow living in a house that is too big for her. They see the peeling paint on the detached garage and the 20-year-old Volvo station wagon in the driveway, and they see a woman in decline. They see a woman who is overwhelmed, but they do not look closely enough. If they did, they would see that the peeling paint on the garage is actually just the primer coat on a restoration project I am doing myself because I enjoy the physical labor. They would see that the Volvo has a new engine block and runs better than their leased BMWs. And they would see that this house, my masterpiece, is not a burden. It is my canvas. I am a retired landscape architect. I spent 40 years designing the gardens of the wealthiest people in California. I know the value of structure. I know that a strong foundation can support a great deal of weight. But even the strongest foundation will crack if you undermine it from the inside. The doorbell rang. It was not a friendly ring. It was a long, impatient press. I sighed. I placed my shears on the potting bench. I brushed the soil from my apron. It was Easter Sunday. My children were here. I walked through the dining room, past the Tiffany stained glass buffet that Greg had already mentally sold on eBay, and into the foyer. I opened the heavy oak door. Greg stood there. He is 45, a real estate agent who wears suits that are slightly too tight and smiles that are slightly too wide. He was holding a bottle of wine that I knew cost less than $15 and a thick manila folder. Behind him was Angela, 42, my daughter. She was wearing sunglasses, even though the porch is shaded. She was tapping away on her phone. Angela is a socialite, which in her case means she attends charity galas she cannot afford and puts the tickets on a credit card that she expects me to pay off eventually. "Happy Easter, Mom," Greg said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He kissed the air next to my cheek. He smelled of expensive cologne and anxiety. "Hi, Mom," Angela said, looking up from her phone. "God, it is dark in here. Have you thought about skylights? Or just knocking down a wall? It feels like a tomb. It feels like a Craftsman, Angela," I said. "We do not knock down walls in a historic landmark. Come in. The lamb is in the oven." They walked into the living room. They did not comment on the fresh tulips I had cut from the garden. They did not comment on the smell of rosemary and garlic wafting from the kitchen. They walked straight to the coffee table and cleared away my Architectural Digest magazines to make room for Greg's folder. "We need to talk, Mom," Greg said. "Can we eat first?" I asked. "It is Easter. We can eat while we talk," Angela said. "This is important." Greg found a solution. "A solution to what?" I asked. "To the situation," Greg said ominously. I went to the kitchen. I brought out the roast lamb, the potatoes, the asparagus. I had spent 3 hours cooking. I set the table with the good silver, the sterling silver that had been my great-grandmother's. We sat down. Greg poured the wine, He took a large gulp before he even picked up his fork. "Mom," Greg started, leaning forward. "We are worried about you." "I am fine, Greg," I said. "My blood pressure is 120/80. I swim 3 times a week." "Not your health," Angela interrupted, waving a fork aggressively. "Your finances. Mom, look around. This place is falling apart. The roof needs slate work. That is $50,000. The plumbing is original. That is a ticking time bomb. You are living in a money pit." "I have savings," I said. "You have a pension?" Greg corrected. "A small pension. And Social Security. You are what we call house rich and cash poor. You are sitting on a gold mine, but you are living like a pauper. You drive a car that belongs in a museum, and not the good kind." "I like my car," I said. "It fits my gardening tools." "It is unsafe," Angela said. "And these stairs?" "Mom, be realistic. You are 74. What happens when you fall? What happens when you break a hip and you are all alone in this 4,000-square-foot mausoleum? Who is going to find you? The gardener?" "I am the gardener," I reminded her. "Exactly." Greg hit the table with his hand. "That is the point. You shouldn't be gardening. You should be relaxing. You should be in a community, a nice condo, somewhere with an elevator and a concierge, somewhere safe." I looked at my children. I looked at the greed in their eyes, disguised as concern. It is a specific look. It is the look of a hungry dog watching a butcher chop meat, waiting for a scrap to fall. "I am happy here," I said quietly. "This is my home. Your father and I restored this wood with our own hands." "Dad is gone, Mom," Greg said. His voice was hard. "And you need to face reality. You cannot afford this house. The property taxes alone are $20,000 a year. We know you are struggling." I was not struggling. I had a diversified portfolio that I managed myself. I had bought Apple stock in 1998. I had bought Amazon in 2001. But I never talked about money with them. I taught them that money was private. Apparently, they interpreted privacy as poverty. Greg reached for the manila folder. He opened it. "Look," he said, sliding a paper across the antique tablecloth. "I have been working on this for months. I called in a lot of favors. You know the market is softening, right? Interest rates are up. Buyers are scared. High-end homes are sitting on the market for months." He was lying. I read the Wall Street Journal every morning. Inventory in Pasadena was at historic lows. "But," Greg continued, putting on his salesman face a mixture of pity and urgency, "I have a friend, a developer, Mr. Miller. He specializes in distressed historic properties." "Distressed?" I raised an eyebrow. "Ideally, he wants a tear down," Greg said quickly. "But I talked him into a restoration play. He is willing to make a cash offer. No contingencies, no inspections. Quick close. He will take it as is. You don't have to fix the roof. You don't have to clean out the attic. You just take the check and walk away." He tapped the paper. $2.5 million. I looked at the number. $2,500,000. It was a lot of money to most people. But I knew this house. I knew the market. The house down the street, a smaller Craftsman with no garden and a bad renovation from the 90s, had sold last week for $3.8 million. My house, with its original Tiffany fixtures, its green and green woodwork, and its double lot, was worth $4 million. Greg was lowballing me by $1.5 million. $2.5? I asked. "Greg, the Zillow estimate is 3.9. "Zillow?" Angela scoffed. "Mom, Zillow is an algorithm. Zillow doesn't know about the roof. Zillow doesn't know about the ancient plumbing. If you put this on the open market, Buyers will tear you apart during inspections. They will demand credits. You will end up with less than $2 million after fees. And the stress? It will kill you. Mr. Miller is offering cash, Greg emphasized. And he is doing it as a favor to me. But he needs an answer today. He has capital deployed elsewhere. If we don't sign now, the money goes to another project. He pulled a pen from his pocket. A shiny, cheap ballpoint pen. I prepared the exclusive listing agreement and the purchase contract, Greg said. I am waiving my commission on the listing side, Mom, because I love you. I am just taking the buyer's side commission. That saves you 3% right there. He pushed the pen toward me. Sign it, Mom. Sell the house. You need the cash. Let us help you secure your future. I looked at the pen. I looked at my son. He was sweating. A tiny bead of perspiration was trickling down his temple. Why was he so desperate? If he was worried about my safety, why the rush? If he wanted me to have money, why sell for half the value? This is the moment where family ceases to be family and becomes a business arrangement you never agreed to. Greg isn't trying to save his mother. He is trying to liquidate her. He looks at me and sees a walking ATM that is malfunctioning because I refuse to die or move. If you have ever dealt with ungrateful relatives who treat your hard-earned legacy like their personal piggy bank, hit that subscribe button right now. We are about to show them exactly what happens when the bank closes its doors. I need coffee, I said. Greg blinked. Coffee, I said, with dessert. I cannot make a multi-million-dollar decision without caffeine. Angela, clear the plates. I stood up. My knees popped, but I made sure to exaggerate the sound. I grabbed the edge of the table as if I were unsteady. I saw Greg and Angela exchange a look of triumph. They thought I was crumbling. I walked into the kitchen. The kitchen of a Craftsman home is separated from the dining room by a butler's pantry with a swinging door. I pushed the door open and walked through. I did not start the coffee maker. I stood in the pantry, in the dark, and I leaned my head against the door. It was solid oak, but sound travels through the gaps. She is going to do it, Angela whispered. Her voice was sharp and excited. Did you see her hands shaking? She is terrified of the roof repairs. I told you, Greg said. She has no idea what this place is worth. She thinks it is 1990 still. 2.5 is a steal, Greg, Angela said. Are you sure Miller is on board? Miller is just the front, Greg hissed. Keep your voice down. My breath caught in my throat. What do you mean? Angela asked. Miller is the LLC, Greg explained. I am the silent partner. He buys it for 2.5. We put in maybe $100,000 for cosmetic paint and staging. We don't fix the roof. We just patch it. Then we put it back on the market in 6 months for $4.5 million. We split the profit. That is $1 million each, Ange. $1 million each. Oh my God! Angela gasped. That pays off my credit cards. That pays off the Audi. Greg, you are a genius. I know, Greg said. But we have to get her to sign today. If she talks to a lawyer, or if she calls one of her old architect friends, we are dead. We have to scare her. Make her think the house is dangerous. I will mention the stairs again, Angela said. I will tell her I had a dream she fell. I stood in the dark pantry. I looked at the copper pots hanging on the wall. My children were not worried about me. They were not trying to secure my future. They were robbing me. They were planning to steal $2 million of equity from their own mother, flip the house I raised them in, and split the profit like thieves. They were going to patch the roof. Patch it! After telling me it was a disaster. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It was not sadness. Sadness is for when you lose something you love. I had not lost my children. I realized I never really had them. They were strangers who happened to share my DNA. I felt clarity. I looked at the coffee maker. I turned it on. I let it gurgle and hiss. I waited 3 minutes. Then, I put a smile on my face. It was a fragile, trembling smile, the smile of a confused, overwhelmed old woman. I picked up the tray of coffee cups. I walked back through the swinging door. "Here we are," I said, my voice wavering slightly. "Decaf for me. I get so jittery these days." I set the tray down. I sat in my chair. Greg pushed the pen toward me again. "The coffee smells great, Mom. Now, just sign right here on the X. Then we can stop worrying. You can relax." I picked up the pen. My hand trembled intentionally. "It is just so much," I said. 45 years, Greg. Your father and I." "I know, Mom," Angela said, reaching out to touch my hand with her cold, manicured fingers. "But Dad would want you to be safe. He would want you to have the cash." $2.5 million, I whispered. "It is a lot of money." "It is a fortune," Greg said. "You will never have to worry again." I looked at the paper. I looked at the clause that said dual agency. Greg Sterling represents both buyer and seller. Conflict of interest. Fraud. Betrayal. I put the pen down. "I can't sign it today," I said. Greg's face fell. "What?" "Mom, I told you Miller needs an answer now." I know, I said, pressing a napkin to my eyes. "But I need to say goodbye. I need a week. Just 1 week, Greg. To pack up your father's things. To sit in the garden. I can't just sign it away on Easter. It feels like bad luck." "Mom, superstition is not a business strategy," Greg snapped. "Please," I said, looking at him with wide, watery eyes. "If you force me to do it today, I will have a panic attack. I can feel my heart racing." I clutched my chest. Angela kicked Greg under the table. I saw the tablecloth move. "Okay," Greg said, grinding his teeth. "Okay, 1 week, but not a day more. I will tell Miller to hold the funds, but he is going to be angry. You are lucky I have pull with him." "Thank you, Greg," I said. "You are such a good son, always looking out for me." "Yeah, well." Greg stood up. He grabbed the wine bottle, saw it was empty, and frowned. "Start packing, Mom. Don't hoard anything. Just get rid of it. We want the house empty." "I will," I said. "I will get rid of everything." They left 10 minutes later. They didn't help clear the table. They didn't take the leftovers. I watched their cars drive away, Greg's leased BMW and Angela's financed Audi. I stood in the foyer of my beautiful $4 million Craftsman home. 1 week, I whispered. I walked to my study. I sat down at my desk. It is a solid oak partner's desk that dates back to 1910. I opened my Rolodex. Yes, I still use a Rolodex. It is safer than the cloud. I flipped past D for doctor, past G for gardener. I stopped at K. Kavinsky. Mr. Kavinsky. The tech billionaire in Silicon Valley. The man who had commissioned me to design the Japanese Zen gardens for his corporate headquarters in 1999. I remembered the last time he visited. He had walked through my house, running his hand over the woodwork, looking at the stained glass with reverence. "Martha," he had said, "this house is a cathedral. If you ever decide to sell, you call me. I don't care what the market says. I want the art." I picked up the phone. It was Easter Sunday. But billionaires don't take days off. I dialed the number. "This is Kavinsky," a voice answered. Crisp. Alert. "Mr. Kavinsky," I said. "This is Martha Sterling." "Martha!" His voice warmed instantly. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Are you coming out of retirement to fix my koi pond?" "No," I said. I am calling about the house. The Pasadena house? Yes, I said. I am ready to sell. Name your price, he said. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask about the roof. 6 million, I said. There was a silence on the line. Done, he said. I will have my jet in Van Nuys tonight. I want to walk the property tomorrow morning. Good, I said. And Mr. Kavinsky? Yes, I need absolute discretion. No MLS, no public listing. My son is a real estate agent, and I do not want him to know the property is sold until the wire hits my account, Kavinsky chuckled. Family drama? Corporate restructuring. I said, I understand, he said. See you tomorrow. Martha, I hung up the phone. I looked out the window at my garden. The bonsai tree was sitting on the bench, perfectly pruned. Greg wanted a flip. He wanted a quick buck. He was about to learn that you never underestimate the architect. I wasn't just going to sell the house. I was going to redesign my entire life, and he wasn't going to get a single cent of the commission. Mr. Kavinsky arrived at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. He did not drive a flashy car like my son's leased BMW. He arrived in a black sedan with tinted windows, driven by a man who looked like he used to be a Navy SEAL. Kavinsky stepped out. He was 60 years old, wearing a black t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers that I happen to know cost $500. He looked at the house. He did not look at the peeling paint on the garage or the moss on the slate roof. He looked at the bones. He looked at the way the eaves hung low over the porch to shade the interior from the California sun. It is a masterpiece, Martha, he said, walking up the driveway. They don't build them like this anymore. The timber alone is worth a fortune. The timber is old-growth redwood, I said, shaking his hand. And the stained glass in the foyer is original Tiffany. We walked through the house. He moved with a quiet reverence. He touched the wainscoting. He opened the French doors to the garden. 6 million, he said, standing in the middle of the living room. I will wire the funds to escrow today. We can close on Friday. Friday is perfect, I said. My children expect me to sign their papers on Sunday. Then we have 48 hours of breathing room, Kavinsky said, with a smile. I will have my team handle the title transfer. It will be recorded as a blind trust purchase. Your name won't appear on the public deed until after the county recorder processes it next month. By then, you will be long gone. I intend to be, I said. We shook hands. There were no contracts drawn up on a napkin, no pressure tactics, just two professionals making a deal. He left as quietly as he had arrived. I called my attorney, Mr. Henderson. He is 80 years old and still goes to the office every day because he enjoys the air conditioning. It is done, Howard, I told him. Prepare the wire instructions and set up the charitable remainder trust we talked about. I want to zero out the capital gains tax. And the children? Henderson asked. Should I draft a letter? No letter yet, I said. I want to see them one last time. I want to see exactly how much they think I am worth. On Wednesday, Greg and Angela arrived. They said they were coming to help me pack. In reality, they came to loot. Greg brought a U-Haul truck. Angela brought rolls of blue painter's tape and a stack of sticky notes. Okay, Mom, Greg said, clapping his hands as he walked in. We need to be ruthless. You are moving to a condo. It is 900 square feet. You cannot take this furniture. It won't fit. I know, I said. I am only taking my clothes and my sketchbooks. Great, Angela said. She was already eyeing the Persian rug in the hallway. So, we will help you get rid of the rest. We can donate it or, well, Greg and I can store some of it for you. So it stays in the family. Well, store it? I asked. Yeah, Angela said, peeling off a sticky note. She walked over to the grandfather clock, a piece my husband had restored by hand. She slapped a note on the glass that said, "Angela, I will take this," she said. "It fits my foyer perfectly. And the dining set," Greg said. "That table seats 12. You don't know 12 people anymore, Mom. I will take it. It will look great in my staging inventory." They moved through the house like locusts. They did not ask if I wanted to keep anything. They did not ask about the memories attached to the objects. They simply divided my life between them. Angela went to the china cabinet. She opened the glass doors. She took out the silver tea service. It was heavy, ornate, sterling silver. "This is tarnished," she said, wrinkling her nose. "But I can have it polished. I will take this." "You won't be entertaining in the condo, Mom. You will be eating in the cafeteria." She stands there, holding my grandmother's silver, telling me I will be eating in a cafeteria. She isn't inheriting an heirloom. She is stripping a carcass. She assumes I am finished, so she is picking the bones before I am even out the door. If you are sick of greedy relatives who think your possessions are their birthright while you are still breathing, hit that subscribe button right now. Let's show them what happens when the carcass bites back. "Take it," I said quietly. "Take it all. Are you sure?" Greg asked, pausing with a lamp in his hand. "You don't want any of this?" "They are just things, Greg," I said. "Things are heavy." "That is a healthy attitude, Mom," Greg said, nodding sagely. They loaded the truck. They worked for 6 hours. They took the rugs. They took the paintings. They took the silverware. They even took the garden statues. By Friday afternoon, the house was an echo chamber. The floors were bare. The walls were empty, save for the pale squares where the pictures used to hang. I sat on a folding chair in the living room. My 2 suitcases were by the door. Greg wiped sweat from his forehead. "Whew! That was a lot of work. But look at this place. It looks huge, empty. Miller is going to love it. We are going to get that contract signed on Sunday, right?" "Sunday," I agreed. "At noon. Perfect," Greg said. "We will bring the truck back then to move you to the condo. Angela picked up the keys for you. It is on the ground floor, near the laundry room. Very convenient." "Thank you," I said. They drove away in the U-Haul, filled with my past. They were high-fiving in the cab of the truck. I saw them. They thought they had just scored $100,000 worth of antiques for free. I locked the door. I walked to the kitchen. My laptop was sitting on the counter, the only surface left. I opened it. I logged into my bank account. I refreshed the page. It was 4:55 in the afternoon. The wire cutoff was 5 o'clock. I watched the screen, and then it changed. Incoming wire transfer. Kavinsky Trust. Amount: $6 million. I stared at the number. 6? Followed by 6 zeros. It was real. The house was sold. The title had transferred electronically minutes ago. I was no longer the owner of the Craftsman at 422 Oak Lane. I was a tenant in Mr. Kavinsky's house for the next 48 hours. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Not for the house. I loved the house, yes. But a house is just wood and glass. I cried for the children I wished I had. I cried for the version of Greg who would have said, "Mom, keep the house. We will figure it out." I cried for the version of Angela who would have said, "I love this tea set because you loved it." Not because it looked expensive. But those children did not exist. I wiped my face. I closed the laptop. I had work to do. I called the travel agent. Her name was Sarah, and she specialized in world residences. "Is it confirmed?" I asked. "It is." "Mrs. Sterling," Sarah said. "The suite on the Aurora is yours. Lifetime ownership. We have received the wire from your trust. You are fully paid up for 20 years of HOA fees, dining, and housekeeping. You have a balcony suite on the port side. When does it depart?" Monday morning from the port of Los Angeles, she said. But you can board on Sunday afternoon. We have a car scheduled to pick you up at noon. Make it 12:15, I said. I have a meeting at noon. Understood. I hung up. I spent Saturday in the garden. I pruned the roses one last time. I wrote a letter to Mr. Kavinsky, detailing the watering schedule for the bonsai and the specific acid fertilizer the azaleas needed in the spring. I left the letter on the kitchen counter. I slept on an air mattress that night. The empty house groaned and settled around me. Sunday morning broke bright and clear. Easter had been a week ago. At 11 o'clock, I put on my best travel clothes. Linen trousers, a silk blouse, a wide-brimmed hat. I put my passport in my purse. At 11:55, I heard the cars pull up, Greg's BMW, Angela's Audi, and another car, a black Mercedes. That would be Mr. Miller, the developer, Greg's partner in crime. They walked up the porch steps. They were laughing. They were carrying a bottle of champagne. I opened the door before they could knock. "Mom!" Greg shouted. "Happy closing day! We brought the paperwork. And look, I brought Mr. Miller." A man in a cheap suit stepped forward. He looked like a shark who hadn't eaten in a week. "Ma'am?" Miller said, nodding. "Ready to get this burden off your hands? Come in," I said. "But don't get too comfortable. There is nowhere to sit." They walked into the empty living room. Their voices echoed off the bare walls. "Wow," Miller said, looking around. "Great bones. I can flip this in 3 months easy." Greg shot him a warning look. "I mean, restore it." "Right, Miller?" Right. Restore it." Greg placed a folder on the mantelpiece because there was no table. "Okay, Mom," he said. "Here is the check. 2.5 million. Certified funds." He held up a check. I glanced at it. "And here is the deed," Greg said. "Just sign right there." He held out the pen. Angela was vibrating with excitement. "Do it, Mom." I looked at the check. I looked at the pen. I looked at the empty room where I had raised them. "I can't sign this." "Greg," I said. The room went dead silent. "What?" Greg asked. His smile froze. "Mom, don't start this again. We waited a week. You said you just needed to say goodbye." "I did say goodbye," I said, and I packed. "As you can see?" "Then sign," Angela shrieked. "Why are you being difficult?" "I can't sign the deed, Greg," I said calmly. "Because I don't own the house anymore." The silence that followed my announcement was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of a vacuum, the kind that happens right before a structure implodes. Greg stood there, his hand still extended, holding the pen, his mouth open in a perfect O of confusion. Angela blinked rapidly behind her oversized sunglasses. Mr. Miller, the shark in the cheap suit, narrowed his eyes. "You don't own it?" Greg repeated. He let out a short, wet laugh. "Mom, stop it. You are confused. This is dementia talking. Of course you own it. You have lived here for 45 years. I did," I said, smoothing the front of my linen trousers. "But as of 4:55 on Friday afternoon, the title was transferred. The wire was received. The deed has been recorded with the county." Greg dropped his hand. The pen clattered onto the hardwood floor. The sound echoed loudly in the empty room. "Transferred to who?" he demanded. His voice rose an octave. "I checked the MLS this morning. There was no listing. There was no pending sale. You can't sell a house without a listing agent, Mom. That is not how it works." "It is exactly how it works when you sell privately," I said. "Pocket listings. Isn't that what you called your deal with Mr. Miller? An off-market opportunity?" I walked over to the mantelpiece where Greg had placed his lowball offer. I picked up a different folder, a blue one with the logo of my attorney, Mr. Henderson. I sold it to Mr. Kavinsky, I said. Greg froze. Kavinsky? The tech guy? The billionaire? The very same, I said. He has admired the garden for years. I called him on Easter Sunday. He made an offer on Monday. We closed on Friday. Miller stepped forward. He looked furious. He turned to Greg. You said you had this locked down, Sterling. You said the old lady was pliable. You said we were getting it for land value. I did. Greg stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. He turned back to me, his face turning a blotchy red. Mom, you sold it to Kavinsky? For how much? He probably ripped you off. He knows you are an old widow. Did he give you $2 million? 1.8? I opened the blue folder. I pulled out the HUD-1 closing statement. It is a long document filled with numbers, but the most important number is at the bottom of the first page. I held it up. $6 million, I said. The air left the room. Angela gasped. It was a sound like a tire popping. 6 million? Cash, I added. 50% over market value. He paid a premium for the architectural integrity. Greg snatched the paper from my hand. He stared at it. His eyes scanned the lines, desperate to find a mistake. Desperate to find a zero missing. But the numbers were black and white. 6 million, Greg whispered. He looked up, and for a second, I saw the calculation happening in his eyes. He wasn't seeing his mother's success. He was seeing his lost commission. He was seeing the lost profit from the flip. I could have gotten you that, Greg shouted. If you had listed with me, I could have started a bidding war. Mom, you cut me out. The commission on 6 million that is $360,000. You took food out of my mouth. You offered me 2.5 million, Greg, I said, my voice cutting through his hysteria. You tried to steal $3.5 million of equity from your own mother. You were going to patch the roof and flip it. Don't talk to me about taking food out of your mouth when you were trying to starve me. We were helping you, Angela screamed. She stepped forward, her hands shaking. We were managing the asset. But, okay, fine. You sold it for $6 million. She took a deep breath. Her eyes changed. The shock was replaced by a predatory gleam. She looked at me, and then she looked at the imaginary bank account floating above my head. So, Angela said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly sweet tone, you have $6 million in the bank. Mom, that is amazing. That changes everything. We don't need the condo. We can get you a villa. Or we can set up a family trust. Greg knows a guy. We can invest it. We can live off the interest. We can pay off my Audi. We can fix Greg's business. Greg perked up. Yeah, Mom. Okay, you went rogue. You got a great price. I admit it. Good job. But now you have a liquidity event. You need management. You can't just have 6 million sitting in a checking account. The inflation will eat it alive. I looked at them. They were incredible. They had pivoted from robbing me to managing me in the span of 30 seconds. They truly believed that the money was theirs. They believed that I was just the vessel that held the cash until I died. The money is not in a checking account, I said. Where is it? Greg asked sharply. Did Henderson put it in a high-yield savings? Mom, tell me you didn't buy bonds. Bonds are dead money. I spent it, I said. The silence returned. This time, it was heavier. It was the silence of a heart stopping. You. What? Angela whispered. I spent it, I repeated. All of it. That is impossible, Greg said. It has been 2 days. You cannot spend $6 million in 2 days. What did you do? Buy a breathless amount of lottery tickets. I reached into my purse. I pulled out a glossy brochure. It was heavy, printed on thick cardstock. The cover showed a massive white ship cutting through turquoise water. The gold lettering on the front read, "The Aurora, the world's first ultra-luxury residential vessel." I handed it to Angela. "I bought a home," I said. Angela stared at the brochure. "Not a boat," I corrected. "A floating city. I purchased the owner's suite on the port deck. It is a 2-bedroom apartment with a private balcony, a library, and a full kitchen. It travels the world continuously. It circles the globe every 2 years. We spend 3 days in every port: Tokyo, Cape Town, Venice, Antarctica." "How much?" Greg demanded. "How much was the cabin?" "The suite cost $3 million, I said. "$3 million?" Greg screamed. "For a cabin on a cruise ship? Mom, that is a depreciating asset. That is the worst investment I have ever heard of. You could have bought an apartment building." "I didn't want an apartment building, Greg. I wanted a view that changes every morning." "Okay," Angela said, her voice trembling. "Okay, $3 million. That leaves $3 million. That is still a lot. We can work with $3 million. "No," I said. "You can't." I pulled out a second document. A receipt from the cruise line. "The monthly fees on a ship like this are substantial," I explained. "HOA, fuel surcharge, concierge, 5-star dining, housekeeping, laundry. It adds up to about $8,000 a month. And since I plan to live a long time, perhaps another 20 years, I decided to prepay." "You prepaid the HOA?" Greg looked like he was going to be sick. "I prepaid everything," I said. "I set up an irrevocable trust that pays the ship directly. $2 million. It covers my food, my wine, my medical care on board, and my internet, so I can video chat you from Bora Bora. If you answer, that is $5 million." Angela choked out. She was doing the math on her fingers. "That leaves $1 million. Where is the last million?" I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in weeks. "Shore excursions," I said. "And souvenirs. I plan to buy a lot of silk in Thailand. And I plan to drink very expensive wine in Italy. The last million is in a debit account labeled Fun Money. And I intend to have a lot of fun." Greg leaned against the empty wall. He slid down until he was squatting on his heels, his head in his hands. "You burned it," he moaned. "You burned the inheritance. You burned the family legacy on a boat ride." "The house was the legacy, Greg," I snapped. "The house you wanted to gut. The house you wanted to flip for a quick buck. I saved the house by selling it to a man who will love it. And I saved myself by leaving." "You are selfish," Angela hissed. Tears of rage were streaming down her face. "You are a selfish old woman. Dad worked his whole life for that money. He wanted us to have it. Your father wanted me to be happy," I said. "He wanted me to see the world. We planned to travel when he retired. But he died before we could go. I sat in this house for 10 years, mourning him, tending the garden, waiting for you two to visit. And you only visited when you wanted alone." I walked over to my 2 suitcases by the door. "I am done waiting," I said. "I'm going to see the world for both of us." Mr. Miller, the developer, let out a disgusted snort. He looked at Greg, huddled on the floor. "You are a joke, Sterling," Miller said. "Don't call me again. Lose my number." Miller turned and walked out the front door, slamming it so hard the windows rattled. Greg didn't move. He just stared at the floor. "What about the condo?" Angela whispered. We signed the lease on the Shady Oaks condo. We paid the deposit. You signed the lease, I said. So I suppose it is your condo now. Maybe Greg can live there. It is very safe. It has a ramp. A car horn honked outside. 2 short, polite beeps. I looked out the window. A sleek, black Lincoln Town car was idling at the curb. The driver was stepping out, wearing a chauffeur's cap. My ride is here, I said. You can't just leave, Greg said, standing up shakily. Mom, be reasonable. We are your children. You are leaving us with nothing? No house? No money? I am leaving you with your health, I said. And your education, which I paid for. And the lesson that you should never bet against your mother. I picked up my purse. I adjusted my wide-brimmed hat. I have instructed Mr. Henderson to send you postcards, I said. The first one will be from Hawaii. I hear the volcanoes are magnificent this time of year. I opened the front door. The warm California sun hit my face. Mom! Angela screamed, running after me. Mom, please, just give us the $1 million, the fun money. You don't need $1 million for souvenirs. I turned around on the porch. I looked at my daughter. She was 42 years old, desperate, grasping, and empty. I do, I said. I have a lot of living to catch up on. I walked down the steps. The driver met me on the walkway. He took my suitcases. Good afternoon, Mrs. Sterling, he said. Ready for the port? I am ready, I said. I got into the back of the town car. The leather was cool and soft. It smelled of peppermint and luxury. I looked out the window. Greg and Angela were standing on the porch of the house they didn't own, watching the money drive away. They looked small. They looked like strangers. The car pulled away from the curb. We drove down Oak Lane, past the jacaranda trees blooming purple in the spring air. We turned the corner, and the Craftsman house disappeared from view. I sat back. I took a deep breath. I did not feel guilty. I did not feel sad. I reached into my purse and pulled out the brochure for the Aurora. I opened it to the page showing the owner's suite. There was a picture of the balcony, looking out over an endless blue ocean. I traced the line of the horizon with my finger. Bon voyage, Martha, I whispered to myself. I took out my phone. I opened my contacts. I selected Greg and Angela. I hit block caller. Then I turned the phone off. The car merged onto the highway, heading west toward the ocean. And for the first time in 74 years, I was completely, wonderfully free.